the less interaction we have, the more people aren't people. They're an idea. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now, where again, I'm amazed how guys that have never spent longer than 5 minutes on South Side Chicago, they know so much about South Side Chicago.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Or that's I think I you were breaking down certain other arguments from the other side. I think it was, I forget which video was it I was watching of yours. And one that I hear all the time that is just downright, I think it's pitiful, is the black on black crime. And they'll sit there, these guys that look like, well, don't really look like me, or gross versions of white people will say things like, well, what about black on black crime? You guys don't want to
Well, I,
say anything when that happens.
what surprised me again as I started getting in the public discourse is I find black people saying this. I mean, professional black people saying, "Hey, the facts are the facts. We do have a problem."
Who's that?
And so,
Candace Owens or?
no, no, I'm saying so. This was the other shocker. So I'm a stats guy, so I like working on the aggregate, the average.
Mm-hmm.
But you have outliers. I run into other black people who will say, "What about black?" In fact, I just saw before we went on here, I just saw a black guy, share a meme that said that 98% of black people are killed by black people, 1% are killed by cops. And no, it said 97% are killed by black people, 1% by cops, 2% by white people who are not cops. Biggest crock of shit ever. So I don't care whether you pull it from the Bureau, the Justice Department, or you pull it from the FBI. We've got to remember the police at the state and federal level, there's no obligation to do this. So you're not going to find these reliable stats any lower. But it teeters around 80% black on black crime. Now, what people who speak like that casually or inconveniently dismiss is that white on white crime is about 79% itself.
Mm,
So, what we should be asking, so the first thing we should have asked when we started talking about black on black crime, is it different? And the
yeah,
answer is no, it's not
exactly.
different at all. And the second thing we should be asking is, why is that? And it makes sense when you think about it. Most crimes are not away games. You know,
True. Very true.
most people like, you know what? Bloods and Crips are not saying, you know what? Let's fly out to Miami and get this done, son. No,
Yeah.
it's proximity, who you live around. So in Chinatown, most crime is Chinese on Chinese. So you should expect that who you live around is where most of the crime will happen. Now, a large percentage of minorities still live in cities. Now, that's changing very abruptly as the younger generations adapt and move out and do their progressive thing. But you have this population that, for a long period of time, was not legally allowed to live in most places in this country. Talking about Chicago, my people were only allowed legally to live on the south side and west side. I think that was finally tore down in the 60s.
Yeah, it was. I actually, damn, I wish I had the exact timeline. I'm in a summer course right now. I'm still finishing up in school, and it's like a multicultural theater course because I have to get all my requirements in. And we just watched A Raisin in the Sun, that's what that whole play is about. This family, three generations live in the same household. The grandmother's husband dies, so they got his life insurance policy, and she buys them a house in Clybourne Park. And this is like right as that had just been dropped. And when the white people in the neighborhood find out that they bought the house, they send over the welcoming committee to basically try and force them to not come into the neighborhood by purchasing the house from them. And there's a bunch of drama and a big family arguments that ensue, but that's like the gist of the play, is whether or not they want to risk it, because the last black people to live there, their house got burnt down magically.
Right.
And so that was the whole play.
And people like to talk about that like that's so long ago. But that's my parents' generation. That,
Yeah.
when they were kids, so my grandparents, their parents, that is that generation where that was happening, where you're trying to move somewhere else and you're not allowed. I mean, I talk about this a lot, stratify. You got what, no matter your ethnicity, everyone's the same. Meaning you got some people that aren't trying to do nothing with their lives, and then you got people trying to climb. So you always, so that you'll hear that a lot. Well, the Irish had it bad too.
Oh
I love
God.
that one.
Yeah. Oh
So
God.
I say I agree, but the difference is if you were an Irish guy and you went to school and you became a doctor or a lawyer, guess what you got to do? You got to leave the Irish ghetto. If you were an Italian or a Jew and you went to medical school, you became a lawyer, you became a banker, you got to leave your respective ghetto. The African American is the only ethnicity where even if you became a banker, a doctor, or a lawyer, you were not allowed to leave the hood. They would firebomb your house. First off, they wouldn't sell you a house, but if you found a either courageous or greedy white guy to sell you a house, because you got to remember back in the day, there was no for sale by owner. It was the MLS system. Realtors had the game on lock. So if you found a guy willing to sell you a house, first off, he normally got blacklisted and shut down. But if he didn't,
Yeah.
you would get your house torched and firebombed like Jesse Bingham out of Chicago, first black banker, until one of your kids gets killed. And then you move back to the ghetto. So there you are, a doctor or a lawyer trying to build up for your kids, but your kids are right next to the kids whose parents are drug dealers, pimps, gangsters. And that is one way to destroy a people, to not allow them to stratify. So these these are things that, and we need to step back, I think, because this isn't taught in school. So when I went out into the world, I was very mad at America, not just white America, America,
Hmm.
for treating me the way it did. And then then I had to realize that most of the people that I run into, they're just like me. They were not taught these things we should have been taught.